Hello and welcome back to the Battle Buddies podcast. Gabe and myself are here with episode 2. Today's episode is called Before You Start, You Should Know. And the reason it's called that is today we're talking about that concept of whenever you start something, you're going to be a white belt at it. Whenever you start something, you're not going to be very good at it. And we touched on this a little bit in the last episode, but we're really going to dive deep into it today. So, Gabe.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. It's good to be here.
I have a question for you.
I maybe have answers. We'll see.
When you first started martial arts, were you a pro at it?
Yes, actually. I started and I was beating up all the instructors.
Jump, spinning, heel kicks all day.
Yeah, jump, spinning, heel kicks all day. No. When I started martial arts, first of all, I was 4.
Mm-hmm.
I was not proficient at almost anything. The one thing I could do, and this is kind of funny. This is a little bit of a side note, but I have very few memories of when I was 4. That one is more vivid than any others from that time period. I remember very clearly being in the gym at the time we were at. It was actually a church that we rented out. And I remember running back and forth. That was the one thing I could do well, man. The one thing I was good at was running. I had nice long legs, I guess, for a 4-year-old. But if it came to kicking or punching or anything else, no, that was not my forte. And I remember one of the oldest memories I have, by the way, just another side note. One of the oldest memories I remember my brother getting complimented on pivoting on his cross. I started with him. First day in, he and I started martial arts. He gets complimented on pivoting on his cross. Sensei himself comes over and says, guys, stops the class. Look at this. Look at Daniel here pivoting on his cross. Of course, being a great instructor as he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he points that out. And of course, little 4-year-old me goes, man, why didn't I get complimented? Of course, it was because I wasn't doing it, but why didn't I get complimented? And so I think that was a very helpful moment in my life. Funny enough, it's strange. There's a lot of talk about moments when you're young that can define when you're old. I'm not sure if I believe all of it, but I think that your youth can definitely hold a lot of sway in your adult life.
For sure.
And I think this was one of those moments. If that's the case, this is one of those moments because that instilled in me a desire to get praise like he did and to be the same as him, not to be the younger brother. There wasn't
lit
a lot
that fire in you.
Yeah, exactly. There wasn't a lot of age difference between us. But from early on there was this notion of, all right, I got to work harder to be better than the others, right? I got to work harder to be better than they are. And I think this especially helped. We're fast forwarding a decade now, but when I was growing up, or maybe not quite a decade, about 8 or so years, when I was a brown belt, I had 2 high school friends. Oh, I wasn't in high school at the time. I was almost in high school. But I had 2 high school friends who were very competitive, very driven, and very good at martial arts too. And my brother was the same way. And I knew, and all 3 of them were older than me, and I knew that if I wanted to keep up with them, if I wanted to be on the same pace, I'd work a little harder. I had to work hard to get to that level and keep up with them. And so I think that was a big help of me getting started in martial arts.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great testament to your patience for working hard. I, myself, am a terrible artist. I cannot draw for the life of me. But I'm taking an art class right now in school because I need it for the credits. And so I'm having to force myself to be patient with whatever project it is we're working on at the time. I have to keep telling myself, be patient, be patient. At the end it will look good. If I'm patient now and I pay attention to the details and I have a little bit of grit and I take care to actually hone my craft, it'll look good at the end. But the problem is I want the results now. And that's such a thing in our culture, right? We want the results now, now,
Yeah.
now. And we have to remember, it's not going to come immediately. When you start something, you're not going to be good at
You're
it.
gonna be bad at it.
Yeah.
You're gonna be awful at it, usually. You're
And
gonna be
even
terrible.
that can be relieving too, because it takes the pressure
Yeah.
off. Like, you don't need to be
No
good at
kidding.
it right now. We were talking about before how in movies and stuff you see these main characters who are instantly so good at the thing that they have to do. Like Luke Skywalker gets 2 days of training. I can defeat Darth Vader.
Yeah.
That's not
That's
how.
not how
yeah.
it works. Sorry, guys. But yes, it is relieving. I think that it's relieving because, one, it's shoot, I got to put in the work. But also, it's relieving because you know then that when you're messing up, you're not the only one. That is a big relief, right? When you mess up, you're not the only one. Because, man, it sucks to mess up and be the only one messing up. If you've ever had a class where everyone's doing the things correctly and you're the one who's going and doing it incorrectly,
It's the worst.
yeah, that's demoralizing right there. That'll end a student's career. Just them being destroyed by, I look stupid, I'm the only one who does. And so it's so important for us to remind people, hey, when you're new at something, you're gonna mess up. You're gonna fail a lot of times, right? The quickest way to success is constant failure.
Absolutely.
Quickest way to success is constant failure. And remembering that, keeping that in mind, means that you're going to succeed a lot more in the long run because you're okay with failing and you're
Yeah.
okay with messing up.
And I'm just thinking of this right now, but it's kind of the whole moral of the story in The Tortoise and the Hare. Kind of that whole concept of, I may walk slowly, but I never walk backwards.
Yes.
I might be a tortoise, I might walk slowly, but before you know it, I'm going to be crossing the finish line before you.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be in the gym, getting my reps, working on my punches, working on my kicks, or whatever thing it is that you're working on, whether it be music or dance or whatever it is, you're in there with it because you've got the grit and you're patient.
Yeah. It's one of the stories I actually tell. We're talking through discipline as our character word. That's one of the stories I tell, is the tortoise and the hare, because long-term work trumps short-term gain. That long-term drive can trump that short-term, I'm going to be successful right now. I'm going to be successful now. And you see that so beautifully in the story of Tortoise and the Hare, because the hare has this confidence in him, this confidence of, oh, I can beat anybody. And so much confidence, well, arrogance, that he gets beaten by one of the slowest creatures out there. Not because necessarily the tortoise was way faster than him, of course he wasn't, but because he was willing to put in consistent work, where the hare wasn't. The hare was willing to take breaks, take a day off, rest, go light, go easy, and because of that he lost the race, because the hare was not willing, where the tortoise was willing to keep working nonstop at that thing to get to his goal that he desired.
Absolutely. I want to kind of bring us into our next section here, which is still going to go off struggling at a craft when you first start it, which is the competence ladder, I guess
Yes,
you could
the
call
competence ladder.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll let you.
Yeah, of
explain
course.
this
So
one.
the competence ladder, first of all, I'm trying to remember her name. I did right. Noel Birch. The conscious competence learning model is what its technical name is. It's developed in the 70s by Noel Birch, and she developed it as a means of judging progress. But it doesn't just judge progress in the immediate term of I'm progressing. It judges from the top, the I've achieved, all the way back to the start of I don't even know this exists, right? And so the competence learning model goes like this. It starts out with unconscious competence, and then it goes to conscious incompetence, and next comes conscious competence, and then lastly is unconscious competence. So unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and then unconscious competence. That's a mouthful to say all at once, just as a side note. But if we were to break that down, the first one, unconscious incompetence, is where most people live. right? 90% of the world is hidden to you, as in you don't know it exists, you don't know it, right? I think of you play the trumpet. I have no idea how to play a trumpet. I don't know how it works. I don't know how to play the notes. I can't play a scale. Can't play a song. You know how to do all those things.
Yeah.
But to me, that's not something I know about, and it's definitely not something I can do. So those are the two working together. I don't know about it, unconscious, and I can't do it. Incompetence. I lack the competence.
If you were
be
to
able
make
do
a
it too.
mistake, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, that's the other thing is when you are unconsciously incompetent, you don't know what is good and what's not. You don't know what is well done and what isn't well done. You have some bearings as a human being, I think, on reality to know if something is so amazingly horrible that that's not something that should be looked up to or treated as an example. But as a general rule, if I don't know about the trumpet and I hear you play a note that maybe isn't the right note in your song, I probably won't be able to pick that up and say, "Oh, hey, you messed up right there playing that C." No, I'm not going to be able to tell that because I have no idea. And
They actually use this in theater and musical performances. They tell you, if you mess up, just keep going, because the audience
doesn't know. The audience doesn't know. I remember hearing that when I was taking piano. I think that is where, or I know that is where most people live, because so much of life is hidden off to us. You know, I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about this in some of his lectures. He talks about this in his book as well. The idea of judging what you know versus what you don't know, and comparing them and seeing which one is more important to you, because you have to decide which is more important, what you know or what you don't know. Because you can say, what do I know? I don't know a lot. What do I want to know? I want to know a lot. But really, if your life is perfect, why should you worry about what you don't know? And he kind of,
you already know everything.
I think it's sort of a fascistical way of saying it, but if you have a perfect life, then why should you care about what you don't know? If your house is in order, your world is set, you know everything you want to know, you've mastered everything you've wanted to master, why should you care about what you don't know? You already have it all, right? And that is nobody.
Yep.
Nobody is a perfect master at anything. There's always something more to learn.
There isn't even a person who masters everything in martial arts on its own.
There's nothing you can learn all of, right? There's nothing you can really learn the totality of. And so what that means is you're going to fall into the category of what you don't know should be more important to you. And what that means then is that you should be seeking what you don't know at every point in turn. Every moment you get to learn something new, you should. He talks about, and I've told this to the kids a lot, to the students, I say, everyone here knows something that you don't know. And he says it in his rule, he says, assume the person you're talking to knows something you don't, which is the same principle. It's, there is so much knowledge out there that other people have accumulated, and there's so much experience and wisdom that they've gathered that you haven't, because you haven't lived the same life. You haven't done the same things. And so what that means is every time you talk to someone, there's a chance that you will walk away a little bit less ignorant because they taught you something new that you had never heard before. I think that if you go into life with that mindset of every time I talk to someone, every time I hear someone speak, there is a chance that I will learn something I never heard before, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson puts it a beautiful way. He says, every day, and I've tried to live this out as best I can, every day you should try to learn one new thing. Every day you should learn one thing. And every week you should try to at least have your mind blown once. And I thought, man, that's so good, because that means that every day I'm getting a little bit less ignorant, a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more wise than I was yesterday. And if I keep that trajectory, that means over time I'm going to be always growing at a steady pace, right? I'm always going to be learning a little bit more. And so keeping that in mind is, I think, so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the next part, conscious incompetence. Going back to the trumpet example, this is now you've reached a point where you can play the trumpet and you can make mistakes, but you're aware of it. You know when you play a wrong note, you know when you're out of tune, or even from a martial arts lens, I didn't chamber as high as I should have there, I didn't keep my hand up. You're still incompetent, but you're aware of it now. And this is a good place to be, because this is where you can start getting help to fix it, right? And it can lead you right into conscious competence.
Yes.
I remember when I first started teaching, I was really in the mindset of that conscious incompetence. I was aware of the things that I was doing wrong on the mat, or I was aware of the fact that I didn't necessarily know what to do. So I guess it was a little bit of unconscious incompetence, but I was very willing to go to the elder instructors and say, how do you do this? How do you do this?
Yeah, which you should.
Yeah.
You should be doing that, especially if you don't know yourself. It's Jocko Willink who says, surround yourself with people who are better than you.
Mm-hmm.
People who are stronger than you, people who are wiser than you, because if you do that, you're always going to be learning and improving. I think that, sort of to go back to unconscious incompetence, but not exactly. I think that learning to grow yourself is an uncomfortable thing, because when you're in that unconscious incompetence, you're at peace, right? Because you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
right? And you don't know how terrible you are at what you don't know about. And so what that means is, if I've mastered all the things that I'm currently working on, all the projects I have, or all the things I'm trying to improve on, if those are already taken care of, well, then I'm at a sense of calm, right? Of still. I'm not having to be working or moving forward, right? I'm not in motion anywhere. I'm still. And being still is a nice thing. It's a comfortable thing, at least. I don't know if it's a good thing, but it's a comfortable thing. When you learn that you don't know, you are essentially removing a sort of roof. Francis Schaeffer, who's a Christian philosopher, he talks about this in the form of evangelism. But it applies, I think, to multiple different realms of reality. And that is when you expose someone to truth, not their truth, not your truth. When you expose people to reality, it's almost as if you're removing a roof above their head. Removing the roof is as he calls it. Removing the roof, meaning I am now exposing you to all these things that you didn't know about. All these truths that you didn't know, and now you have to deal with them, which is an uncomfortable thing, right? That's not fun.
Realizing that you sucks.
Yes. Nobody wants to feel like they're ignorant. Nobody wants to feel like they don't know anything, because that's a terrible place to be. Because that means, once again, what do you have to do? You either have to live in that knowledge of, I am not where I desire to be, or you have to go work to fix it. Right?
Absolutely.
It's the red pill in the Matrix.
Yeah, this
right?
is something that I've struggled with, which is the realizing that truth, that I'm not good at something. And you kind of have to decide between, all right, let's go work to fix the problem, which is the right thing to do, or just sit there and wallow in it, which is what sometimes I do. Because when I realize that I'm not doing something well, I just sit there and go, oh, dang, I'm the worst. And I just beat myself up a little bit, which, don't waste time doing that. If you're a person who does that, don't waste time doing that, because what you could be doing, instead of wasting time beating yourself up, you could be working to fix the problem. One of the best things that I've heard is, if you have a problem, or if you've had a mistake, all right, instead of whining and complaining about the problem, complaining about the mistake, go into a mirror, look at that mirror, and look at yourself and say, what is something I could have done to make the situation better? It's something that's helped me, right? Because there have been times where I screwed up, because I'm a human being, and I realize I can't waste time thinking about the problem, but I can spend time trying to fix the problem.
I don't need to wallow, right? In the Matrix, this is a goofy tangent, so bear with me. But in the Matrix, I'm a firm believer in movies and film and fiction are mirrors of reality, if they're done correctly, at least. They're mirrors of a chunk or a portion of reality, and they echo reality. And I think the Matrix kind of echoes ignorance, where you take the blue pill and you can live in ignorance. You don't need to know about how horrible your life is and how miserable you're going to be and how miserable you really are. Or you can accept the knowledge, which is a burden, right? Knowledge is a burden. If you accept knowledge of your unbearable ignorance, that puts a weight on your shoulders, because now I gotta either live in a state of miserable ignorance or I gotta go fix it, which means I gotta go work.
Yep.
Right? And we don't like work as human beings. We prefer to be, like I said earlier, we prefer to be comfortable. And so revealing yourself, taking that red pill, means now I gotta deal with my ignorance. Now I gotta deal with that, and I have to make it not ignorance. I have to make it knowledge, and I have to make it wisdom, and I have to make it mastery. And that takes time, and that takes effort. If I don't want to live in ignorance, I have to put in work.
Yeah. When you decide to put in that work and have that grit, you can reach conscious competence. Is those times where you're training and you're telling yourself, okay, let's make sure I keep my hands up when I throw this punch, and you're conscious of the fact that you did it. You're like, yes, I kept my hands up. I've been training to keep my hands up, and I finally did it. That's that conscious competence. You're aware of when you're doing better. You're aware of that progress. And then kind of reaching unconscious competence, and it's so cool to see people who are at this level. They just are experts, and they do these incredible things without even knowing it, because they've repped it again and again and again. I think of Master Chip, who just throws out it.
Chip, you mean?
Grandmaster Chip.
Grandmaster Chip
That's
Townsend.
Right. I've been
promoted.
getting used to calling him Master
So
Chip
cool.
for the last few years, that I need to readjust.
Well, when we met him, he was Master Chip Townsend. But this year, I forget when it was exactly, he got promoted 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Yeah.
Holy moly, man. That guy, he'll kick you in half. I don't know, for those who don't know this guy, Grandmaster Chip Townsend is a Taekwondo master, Grandmaster, and he also holds multiple world records for competitive breaking, as in breaking bricks, breaking boards, breaking baseball bats. He holds the world record for the most baseball bats broken in one round kick. He broke four baseball bats with one round kick. So, by the way, I did get kicked by him. It hurt. My organs hurt. I volunteered for it because I wanted to know, because I was working with him. It was one of the first times. I've always been a huge fan of him. Yeah, it hurt. It hurt a little bit. That's all besides the point. But yes, watching those people who have that unconscious competence is so driving too for your conscious competence. I like to think of conscious competence as training and unconscious competence sort of as mastery, because when you're in that phase of conscious competence, that's when you're learning how to improve in that field, learning how to grow in that field, learning what works, learning what doesn't, learning how to make yourself better. And that's, first of all, it's a hard process, but it's also a process that takes time. It takes time. The reason that these masters are where they are is because they've been working at it for decades.
Yeah,
not
20, 30,
not
40,
years,
50
decades.
years.
They've been working on it for decades. I've been doing martial arts for a decade and a half. They've been doing it for some of them 4 times that.
Yeah. Some of them, they've been doing martial arts for longer than you were alive.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the promotion, unfortunately, but I remember seeing the pictures of Grandmaster Chip Townsend when he got promoted by one of his grandmasters, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but you can look at him and you can tell there is a lot of experience in that mind of yours, man. That there is a lot of knowledge there. And so keeping that in mind, going back to conscious competence, there's a little bit of a dichotomy there, because you need to aim at people who are successful. It's good to admire them and to aspire to be them, but at the same time, your ultimate indicator of success should be yourself. And here's what I mean by that. This is another, back to him again, another Jordan Peterson principle. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. As in, I am a huge fan of Master Chip Townsend. I've had the privilege of training with him on many, many occasions. I've followed his work. I've watched a lot of his videos, of his content, his teaching principles, his martial arts principles. But I don't know him personally very well. I've gotten to talk with him and meet with him, but I don't know him personally very well. And I think this really goes for, how do I say this? People who admire or aspire to be like some random celebrity who they know nothing about. They just know they like their music, they like what they make, they look nice, they seem to have it all, right? You watch the Facebook feed of them and you see all your life is perfect, but in reality they're addicted to drugs or on some sort of stress medication, and they lash out at their peers and they lash out at their manager and they lash out at their staff, and nobody likes to work with them. They only do it because they get paid, and it's a toxic work environment. But you don't know that. You don't know that. They could also have a great life. So they're not a good indicator of success. Well, who do you know? That's easy. You know yourself. You know you better than you know anyone else. And so a good point off of that should be you should strive to compare yourself to yesterday's you.
Yeah.
You should compare yourself to yesterday's you. I like to say, it's kind of a funny way I talk about it to the students, is you should be able to beat up yesterday's you. If you and yesterday you got into a fight, you're going to whoop him, right? You're going to beat him up. He's not going to survive. You are so much wiser in the present than you were in the past, is what you should look at. And that should be your goal. And that doesn't have to be massive success every day. In fact, sometimes it shouldn't. It should be little bits of success every day, like we talked about earlier. Learn one new thing every day. Learn just a little bit more. Just be a little bit less ignorant than you were yesterday. It's not a sprint. It's a trot. Right?
Yeah.
You're not gunning for that finish line. You're slowly making your way that way. And you can gauge what progress looks like for you, because it's going to be different for every person. But as long as you're making just a little bit more progress, a little bit better, you're a little bit wiser than you were yesterday, that's your indicator of conscious competence. That's how you achieve that.
Yeah. Another way I've heard it put is get 1% better each day. Because 1% can turn into 20%. 20% can turn into 30%. 30% can turn into 40%. But I want to address another thing, which can sometimes be, maybe demoralizing is a strong word, but it can be a little bit demoralizing when you're trying to reach that conscious competence, is seeing someone who is unconsciously competent and wishing you were them.
Yeah.
I know I've done this plenty of times before. I've seen someone who's at a certain level, and I'm just like, dang, why aren't I them? Why can't I do that? And I end up comparing myself to that person. And what I want to say to that, and this is something I've heard before that really helped me out, was don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 15.
Yeah.
Because just because you started here and they've been working for a while and now they're here doesn't make you any less competent than them. It just means that they've been working at it for longer.
Yeah, I remember seeing recently I watched a video of Jessica Rose Clark training, who's a UFC fighter. She trains out of CSA, and she was doing round kicks, lead leg round kicks, just bam, bam, bam. It's a Coach Kirian drill where you have to do over and over fast round kicks. It's to work your fast twitch. Anyways, she was working on that, and every kick landed and reset, landed and reset. She didn't lose balance. She didn't fall over. She didn't get too close. She didn't get too far. And I was going, man, why is that so effortless? You see Grandmaster Chip Townsend throw a round kick, and you go, he didn't even think about it. It's so seamless.
Unconscious
it's
competence.
so unconscious, right? And so, yeah, like you were saying, that can be super demoralizing for those who are just starting, for those who are just working. I remember my first day, I was a black belt for at least a year or so. And I remember my first day doing Krav Maga. My first day, I was working with Shihan Timliard. And he taught us movement. I, for the life of me, could not get down the movement. Because all my life I've been, I'm a Taekwondo guy. I grew up in Taekwondo. That's what I know. That's what I can do. I'm a kicking specialist, if I'm a specialist at anything. Moving from one style to another was that sort of demoralizing because I saw, man, I am nowhere near perfection in this.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even gotten perfection at Taekwondo, let alone this new art. And so it took me weeks just to master, okay, you move forward, you move back. You don't bring your feet together. You keep them separate. That alone took so long to get down. And it's easy for us to get impatient, right? You were talking about this earlier. It's easy for us to get impatient with our own success. It's easy for us to get impatient with our own lack of success, should be another way. Or what we see as a lack of success.
I almost want to call this episode the grit mindset.
The grit mindset.
Because we're talking about all these different ways that could stop you from trying to improve, that are going to stop you from reaching conscious competence or unconscious competence. I almost feel like we're saying, all right, this could happen, but remember this. This could happen, but remember this. And what we're trying to hone in on is that grit mindset, right? Of, I understand that I'm going to fail, but I will reach success eventually. I understand that there's people better than me, but that's why I'm going to work hard. And that is such a great mindset to have, especially when there's something that you want to get better at. I'll never forget when I had an instructor who told me, if you want to get better at something, it is up to you to go get it. Have a plan, follow your plan, and stick to the plan.
Yeah, and that brings us, I suppose, to unconscious competence. What looks like mastery needs to be maintained. If you spend 30 years on and then take 10 years off, believe me, you're going to take some time. You'll get back to it, but you're going to take some time to get back into the swing of things. Even if you take a year off, you're going to take some time to get back into the swing of things, get back into that habit.
Every martial artist has experienced this.
Oh, yes. It's a muscle, right?
Yeah.
Skill is a muscle. You have to practice it consistently to keep it strong. I remember back to Grandmaster Chip Townsend, because he's cool and I like talking about him.
Yeah.
I
If he listens to this episode, he's just gonna be like, dang.
Man, it's going to be, we'll call this episode Before You Start, You Should Know, featuring Grandmaster Chip Townsend in the spirit.
In the spirit, yes.
But I remember when I was at a ProMac with him, I took his wife's seminar on fitness. It was a workout. It was early morning workout. And he did the entire workout with her because he's always training. When we had him over at our gym, I remember him coming in. He said his hellos after he was, settled in. He went out on the mat and started kicking our Wave Masters. Yeah. That was so cool to me to see.
As like a sixth-degree black belt.
As a sixth-degree black belt who broke 4 baseball bats with his shin. He broke 4 baseball bats with his round kick. And there he is just on the mat, just kicking the bags.
Yeah.
That was mind-blowing to me because it showed me that even the masters need to keep training, right? Even the professionals, they've honed their crafts, they're masters, they're pros, they're everything. They still need to keep training because the moment you start taking those days off, that's when you're going to start losing it. You're going to start losing that muscle. You know this. You train a lot of strength training.
Yeah.
You know what even a week off is going to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Even a week off, you're going to come back in, you're not going to be able to lift nearly as much. I was out for the last couple weeks when I was on sick leave. Coming back in, my cardio had dropped. It was not good. And I was working out with Eric and I was feeling the effects. We'll just leave it at that. I was feeling the effects of not training consistently. We were just doing an easy Tabata workout, but I was panting like crazy because my lungs had atrophied, right? So remember that when you reach that goal, don't stop, right? Don't stop. We talk a lot about in martial arts. I talked about this with a lot of the other instructors. The idea of the black belt law. And so just for those who don't know, to kind of explain the black belt law, because I think it applies not just to martial arts, but to all of life. When you start to get proficient at something, that's when you start to think that you're really good at it. And that's a scary place to be. That can happen really easily. So to explain to people who don't know what the black belt lull is, the black belt lull is the time in a martial artist's life where they start to think that they have achieved everything they need to know. They wouldn't say that, of course, but
Yeah.
they're comfortable where they are. And they think, yeah, I made it. I got it. I remember this happening when I got my black belt. The following year was my worst martial arts year, hands down, by far. The following year of being a black belt was the least training, the least progress, the least growth of all my years in martial arts. Including when my stance was garbage and all I could do was run around, right? Even then, I was at a stalemate of growth. Growth just stopped. And here's why. I'll explain to you why. And I know why because I've seen it multiple times now at this point. I've been around long enough where I've seen other instructors go through this. Instructors will hit this lull because they feel as though they've made it to their perceived goal. They've made it to their goal. And
They've made it to the end.
yeah, they've made it to the end. And which we talked about earlier, right? Such a dangerous mindset. The mindset of I've made it to my goal means that you're not going to grow anymore, right? The moment you start saying I've learned it all is the moment you're not going to learn anymore. You're not going to learn anything else.
Yeah.
And that black belt lull, of course, it doesn't necessarily happen just when you're a black belt. I've seen it happen with people who are brown belts when they start teaching, say, some of them I've seen that happen in the past, or you know, they make it into some other prestigious group. They start thinking, yeah, I'm done, I made it. And you know what happens to their training? It goes down, it drops, right? It dies. And if they only knew that that was going to happen, I've tried to explain it to some of them, but I think you just got to go through it. You got to make it through that. And you got to be reminded somehow, kind of like a slap to the face. Hey, wake up. You got more to learn. Go get some. Go get learning, right? That's what people need, man. A lot of people need that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually something that you told me is consistently undertrain. Because what I don't want is for people to think, oh, I have to overtrain myself every single day. Because they even talk about this in bodybuilding where it's like, okay, you need to take some time, like a day of recovery for your muscles. Because if you work on the same muscle every single day, it's not going to get stronger. Because you keep breaking it down. Because what you're doing when you're lifting weights is you're breaking the muscle.
Yeah.
And you need to give it time to build back up again. It's the same thing when you're training. There's even that dangerous point where you consistently overtrain and you reach that point of exhaustion and then you lose the grit mindset again. You go, man, this is exhausting. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, kind of back to the whole tortoise and the hare thing, right? Working really hard and then taking a break is not going to pay off as much as consistent work. I think consistently undertraining, like you were saying about muscles, you know, a little anatomy for you. The reason your muscles hurt when you try something hard is because they understand, they recognize that there's tremendous strain, and so they build themselves up to be bigger and stronger so that you can take that strain a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
And that's why if you lift a large amount of weight for a long time, it gets easy because your muscles have grown accustomed to that level of strain. And then if you want to grow them bigger, you got to up the weight, right? You got to make it a little harder. You got to increase that strain level so they're having to work a little bit harder. But at the same time, like you said, if you don't give them time to rest, they're not going to improve. And in the same way, if you don't give yourself time to recuperate and recharge and retrain, then you're not going to have that. It's going to be hard, at least, to keep up that grit mindset. And the grit mindset being, every day I want to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
I always want to be a little better than I was yesterday. And if I keep that in mind, I should be very careful to train all out. I tell a story. I made it up, so it's not wonderful. So, side note. I'll try to make it relatively quick, but the story goes like this. There's a miner, and he hears by some geographical, one of the geodes, he hears there's a geode. He hears there's a ruby somewhere on his plot of land that's massive. And he goes looking for it. And he buys a pickaxe, he buys a shovel, he buys tools, and he goes out, right? And he is excited. And he digs from sunup to sundown, going nonstop. And he finds nothing, of course, because it's pretty well buried. And so he gives up. He says, don't think this is right for me. My arms hurt. I'm tired. So he takes the day off. And about a week later, he goes back to his normal life. He gets that fire again, that passion. Man, what am I doing? There's a massive ruby in my house. I could be digging this thing up and getting rich. So he goes back to work. And you know what? He works from sun up to sundown. This time it's a little harder, right? Because the dirt's getting a little thicker as he goes lower. It's starting to turn to rock. Gets a little harder. He takes the break. He says, man, this is not working out. Takes a week off. A week later, this keeps happening, right? And eventually he goes to this older miner, and he says to him, dig for 2 hours every day. Don't dig nonstop. You're just wearing yourself out. Dig for 2 hours a day. And he does that. And over time, it takes him still a long time, but he eventually finds the ruby. And that's because he plotted a course for success, right? He plotted a course for success. If you only train when you're passionate, only train when you are just on fire, yeah, let's go get this done, right? Not that there's anything wrong with doing that. If you feel an urge to go wreck some bags, right, or really hone your craft, go for it. But if that's the only time you're training, the only time you're honing your craft, your progress will be slowed. Mm-hmm. You're not going to improve as quickly as if you get a little improvement, right? Right back to the start. A little better every day, right?
1%. Doesn't have to be 5%, doesn't have to be 10%.
There's nothing wrong with 5 or 10%.
Yeah, if you get 5%, great. But it doesn't even have to be 2%, just 1%.
Just a little better every day.
Looking at our next note here on our show notes, and you listed here the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yes, so the Dunning-Kruger effect. And this is kind of we went on a little tangent. Hopefully you guys are used to those by now. We went on a little tangent, wrapping back to the sort of the black belt lull, like I was talking about, the idea of, yeah, I achieved everything I wanted to know, everything I need to know, I'm good. There's a psychological term for that called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The study was done by these two guys, David Dunning and, oh goodness, I'm forgetting the other guy's name, but something Kruger. And these two psychologists were were blown away by this absolute monster of stupidity. So, just a little backstory. The reason the study started was they studied a guy who robbed a bank, and he had no mask on, he had no covering, just plain-faced, with the gun, robbed the bank, went to the next bank, robbed that one as well. He even smiled, waved to some of the cameras. Of course, he got arrested a couple days later.
Yeah.
And his rationale was, I put lemon juice on my face, and that makes me invisible. That was his rationale. Lemon juice makes you... I'm guessing it was probably... Yeah, it was probably because, lemon juice can kind of be used, what is it, like to display some invisible ink? I don't know exactly how it works. I don't know the science
Something
behind
like
that. I'm not a scientist. But he thought that putting that lemon juice on his face would make him invisible. And there's a great quote. He says, "But I wore the juice. How'd you find me? I wore the juice." And so they looked at that and went, well, this guy is clearly out of his mind. Or maybe there's more than that. And so they studied him, and what they found was, well, they took a study on him, and then they took a study on a large swath of people, and they did multiple studies. One was on basic human humor, rationale, problem solving. There were a lot of different ones. But what they found was people who are don't be this way, but people in the bottom 25th percentile, the worst percentile, often think themselves, the bottom quarter, the bottom 25%, often
bottom 25% of what?
Of people. The bottom 25% of people often think themselves in the upper 60th percent of competence, right? They think that they are better than the average person.
So when it comes to intelligence is what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
To intelligence, they also did a study. There's another part of it, which was comedy. They had a bunch of average Joes write jokes, and they had a bunch of professional comedians write jokes. And guess who thought their jokes were the funniest? The average Joes thought that their jokes were better than the comedians' jokes. I forget the exact number, but it was like many average drivers think themselves in the top 60%, or the
I think
bottom,
I've heard,
maybe it's the bottom half of drivers, the
yeah,
worst 50% of drivers think themselves better than the top 60%, which obviously can't be true, right?
yeah.
But the point of the Dunning-Kruger effect is that people with little knowledge or skill believe they're better than they actually are, right? They're unable to calculate how competent they really are. And I think that's because they don't, right? Back to the competence ladder. They are incapable of calculating how far along they are because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so how this plays out is they live in that state of unconscious incompetence. By the way, just a side note, I said this a little bit ago, but to dig into it a little more, the competence ladder is not one and done. It happens all the time. There are micro versions of it that happen constant. Whenever there's something new that you learn, it starts a new round of the competence ladder, right? Maybe you just stay at unconscious incompetent, or maybe you go to conscious incompetent, and maybe you stay there, or maybe you eventually learn to master, whatever. But the people who live in that unconscious incompetent state often think themselves superior.
They think themselves as unconscious competence.
Yeah, they think they're a master at it. And what it really does is it deprives you of success. Because if you think you're already good at something, why on earth should you practice it? Why should you work on it, right? Why should you try to get better? And so the black belt lull is a testament of, I think I made it where I am, therefore why should I practice?
Mm-hmm.
I am a master now, therefore why should I try to get better? Which masters will prove wrong, man. If they're in here training, then you should be too.
Yep.
So just to chart how the Dunning-Kruger effect works, I know we're on audio only, so I'll try to visualize this. So picture a graph, right? And your vertical line, you got your graph and your L. Your vertical line is confidence, and your horizontal line below it is competence. So you have confidence and competence. And as you go just a little bit into competence, your confidence skyrockets, right? I think of, without getting too much into politics or anything, you know the people who they'll learn a little bit about something and they'll be like, yeah, Twitter,
Yep.
let's go. I'm an expert
everything
now. I know all about this, right? That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's, I have a little bit of competence. It was Ben Franklin who said, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I have a little bit of competence, therefore I must be a pro, right? And that's when the confidence shoots up. And it can stay there for a while. But once you remove the roof, once you get that conscious incompetence, that's when your confidence plummets. And you learn, oh, I am not as good as I thought I was. And sometimes it stays down there. But the way the model is set is competence grows and your confidence spikes, and then it dips. But after it dips, you start learning, hey, I need to improve myself on this, and it slowly rises back up, right? It slowly gets back. You get your confidence back as you start to gain far more competence than you had when you started. Maybe your confidence never rises to the same spot. Maybe it does. But your competence rises with your confidence, which is how it should be. Otherwise, it's arrogance. Otherwise, it's, I know just a little bit about the subject, therefore I'm going to go on Twitter and tell everyone about how educated I am and how well off I am on this subject, right? Mm-hmm. Arguing with the experts in the field or whatnot. But keeping that in mind, it's good to weigh how much you think you know versus how much you actually know, and reality check yourself on that. And if you can't do it accurately yourself, then talk to people around you who can give you an accurate representation, which is painful. When you really think you're good at something and you go to someone else and you're like, hey, how was I? And they're like, that can hurt your ego a lot. Good. Let your ego get hurt a little bit so that you can grow the competence so that next time you ask them, they say, yeah,
Absolutely.
you're amazing
Yeah.
at that, right? Go to professionals, go to the top in your class, right? The best people at your craft. Talk to them and see where you are because they've done it. Back to the reason we started Battle Buddies. You shouldn't learn to change the world alone.
Mm-hmm.
If you are trying to learn to be a master at anything, learn from the masters. Don't learn from yourself. What the heck do you know? Learn from the masters. That way they can show you where you can be and how to get there. Plot out a course for success. Plot out how you're going to make it to that point. Make yourself a little bit better than you were last time you trained, right? A little bit better than yesterday. Slow work is good work. Slow work will get you where you want to go. It's not going to be overnight that you succeed. Slow work, little by little, is going to get you where you want to do. If you are looking to succeed at something, I guarantee you, a little bit every day is going to help phenomenally. A little bit more, a little bit wiser, a little bit less ignorant than you were yesterday. You are going to achieve what you want in time, right? Sanford Meisner, who is a famous acting coach, he said, don't worry about it. You're going to be a pro at acting in 20 years. You're going to be a pro at acting in 20 years. As in, it's going to take time.
Mm-hmm.
Don't rush it. Don't think you're a master the second day you're practicing. It's going to take time. But if you plot out the course for success and you learn from people more skilled than you, right? Surround yourself with people who are better than you, you are going to succeed in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Or as I've heard before, you might be stronger than me, you might be faster than me, but I will outlast
Yes.
you. Yeah. I think this is a good place to end. What about you?
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a good long episode. Longer than last episode. But
we're only 2 in, so,
Yeah.
we'll see how long they go in the future.
Yeah. Anyway, we will see you guys next time with
Yeah.
episode 3. And hopefully after episode 3, we're looking to bring some guests in.
Yes. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. Once again, feel free to ask us any questions. We didn't get any questions this week. I'm not offended. Don't worry. But feel free to ask us any questions you might have. We would love to answer them to the best of our abilities. It can be related to martial arts. It can be related to teaching. It can be related to philosophy. It can be a random question. It's fine. You can do that on Facebook. You can reply to my feed when I post the podcast. I'll post it on... It's posted right now. What am I saying? You can reply to the podcast feed. I'll give you guys a chance to put the Q&A. You can respond on YouTube. Listen to us on Spotify. Please feel free to share it with other people. It's a martial arts themed podcast, but we're hoping that we can all learn together and there's a little bit of wisdom here for everyone.
All right. Well, I'll be seeing you guys next time.